You've selected a show from the Podcast Jukebox, a DIY podcast network.
It's Will Sean Podcast. The internet cried out for 2 more blowhards, and they courageously answered that call. Armed with the weapon of wit, each week they're joined by guests to discuss movies, television, pop culture, and anything else that's pissing them off. Take it away, boys.
I'm Will Link.
And I'm Sean David.
And this is Will Sean Podcast.
With the biggest button of them all. Happy 2018, everyone. How you doing, Will?
I'm doing all right.
Yeah?
I actually was, we're recording a little later than usual, and
Yeah?
I was a little unprepared to answer that question. I was a little thrown.
We don't have our usual outline.
I don't have the usual rundown. When we go into the documents, we're gonna screw up the episode numbers probably because of this.
Probably. But I had to double check to make sure I numbered it correctly. How was your New Year's Eve?
I was good. I was out till about 4 a.m.
Good.
Which is always good. It'd been a while since I had one of those nights. Mm-hmm. And you need those occasionally.
Do you? I don't think I need it anymore.
you need it. I mean, this wasn't like a crazy running around town party. This was like...
It's not a super bad night.
It was like a bunch of friends sitting around talking about things till dawn.
Quantum Leaps and Murphy's Brown.
Yeah, we talked a lot about Quantum Leap and Murphy Brown. That's how I rang in 2018, talking about shows I watched as a child in the early 90s.
Excellent.
So what's going on in the world of Will Sean Podcast?
Well, once again, as I mentioned, it's 2018, new year, new excitement, same old us. So I want to continue to exhort you to make sure that you have liked us on Facebook, that you are following us on Twitter, and most importantly, are subscribed to us on iTunes. Subscribe, give us a star rating, leave a comment, do all the things that good podcast listeners do. Listen, people, we don't harass you with ads. There's no Harry's Razors. There's no Indochino. There's no Wink, some wine club of the month. I always love the podcast ads for overly ambitious companies. They're like, oh, you're not going to be around in 3 months from now.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, we will bring a fresh puppy to your house every month. It's like, really?
New puppies.
Yes, it's like puppy, but like Puppee.
Speaking of overly ambitious companies, who is our sponsor this week?
BuzzFeed, home of the original list, bitches.
And that is right. Sean mentions lists because this is an episode you stuck with us two assholes.
Well, and Jews love lists.
We are making lists. Sean has checked his probably more than twice.
Yeah.
It is our top 10 movies of 2017 list. We've never done a
No, weirdly we
review.
haven't. I think we've mentioned...
We've mentioned our top 10 movies on individual episodes, but we haven't done...
We haven't indulged in a standalone.
Which is crazy because we are list-oriented people.
You are.
And we are movie-oriented people. And it's shocking that we haven't done our top 10 of the year lists episodes. But 2017, I think, was a great, capital G, great year for films. I'm looking at my list. I have... we're going to do only the 10.
And then we'll mention, so we'll spin back around to our honorable mentions and our 20 to 11.
But I'm looking at my 20 through 11.
Yeah.
And if I had just said, this is my top 10 movies of the year, nobody would bat an eye. That's how good in a year this was.
Yeah.
So let's start. Sean, what was your number 10 film of 2017?
I should probably pull up my list. Probably should pull it up on my iPad, actually. Okay, here we go. My number 10 film was something that I loved while watching it. I disliked after thinking about it a bit, have come around on it, and really believe that this is a movie that we're going to be re-examining and dealing with for a long time.
You've had a roller coaster ride.
I have.
This one.
And that would be Mother by Darren Aronofsky.
Oh, fuck you.
Yes.
Oh, fuck you.
Yes.
This is how we start.
This is how we start. I was okay on Black Swan. So there's two kinds of Darren Aronofsky. I'm fully in the Requiem for a Dream, The Fountain, Black Swan camp.
Okay.
I can do without The Fighter. And
The Wrestler.
Fuck that movie.
The Wrestler, I think, is a great film.
But it's not a Darren Aronofsky movie.
It's The Wrestler is very different than other Aronofsky. It's very emotional in a different
I think
in a different way. It's more straightforward emotionally.
Yeah, this movie is a crazy, insane self-indulgent project by an artist who went and hoodwinked a major studio out of $35 million and said, no, it's cool. We got Javier Bardem, just Jennifer Lawrence, and then he went to Paramount and said, hold my beer, and proceeded to beat her up for an hour and a half. I loved watching this movie. I hated thinking about it afterwards. It made me feel like I needed a hot shower, but I've really come around on it. So when I was being honest with myself, I had to put Mother at my number 10.
It's not a boring movie.
No.
Like, when I saw it, I was not bored by it. And I didn't know what to make of it after I walked out of it. I didn't immediately hate it.
Yeah.
But then after I had discussions with people about it,
Yeah.
I hated it.
Okay.
It's not the worst movie I've seen this year either. But
Well, that's Bright.
I didn't see Bright. But I feel like its metaphors are muddled. I feel like it's not.
I feel
like it's not as smart as it thinks it is.
Let's come back in 2027 where we're doing the Mother 10-year look back.
Okay, I will do that.
Yeah.
I will make that commitment.
And one thing, like a major theme of my list this year is singularity of vision. And so that was a big guiding, that was something that guided me as I worked through this.
It is. I heard that the reason him and Lawrence broke up is because he's so depressed about how poorly received Mother is.
Well, sorry, Darren. Don't worry, Noah 2 is coming right down the pike.
I will say, you know what, from Mother, and Michelle Pfeiffer is amazing in it, and she was pumped up in a lot of stuff this year, and I'm all for more Michelle Pfeiffer. My number 10 is The Disaster Artist.
Okay.
And this almost didn't make the list. In fact, there are movies that I think are probably quote-unquote better made films that I've left off. Mm-hmm. But if I am to be honest with myself, this is a movie that was made just for me. And maybe you too. And the people, like, The Room is something that I have lived with for a long time, for over 10 years. And the fact that there is this studio film about Tommy Wiseau
and this weird movie
in the making of this horrible film, and then the fact that it's good and it takes it seriously and its characters go on an actual emotional journey, I have to give this film so much subversive credit. And also James Franco. Like, you and me have been in the same room as Tommy Wiseau.
Yes.
We have met the man.
We have touched his flesh.
And Franco is doing a dead-on Wiseau. He is pitch perfect.
And it's not just his voice, his mannerisms, it's that sleepy dead eye that he managed as well through makeup.
Yeah.
And like the weird stringiness of the hair.
Wiseau's the kind of person that it's both simultaneously easy to do an impression of him and completely hard to do it, because it's so much of an impression of him usually falls into a caricature, right. But Franco turned it into a character.
But to be fair, how often have we seen people really attempt an impression of Tommy Wiseau? Yeah, you kind of do the voice and stuff, but I've never really seen someone like try like a full
body.
Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah,
we do the voice, and I've been a little worried that it's going to turn into like a Borat.
Yeah.
Like, that people will go, oh, hi. It's going to be...
But they've already been doing that.
They have been. And Franco is probably going to get an Oscar nomination for this, which is also blowing my mind.
You know what this means? It means Tommy Wiseau went full circle and will be invited to the Oscars. Like, this man somehow manifested his crazy fucking bizarre dream with this movie.
And I think the thing that's getting a little lost in it is Franco's direction of this. I often forget he directed this film. Because when you see at the end of the film the side-by-sides of The Room and the recreation of The Room, it blows your mind how dead-on and how slavish he was to every detail. There's a shot where Ari Grainer, and I think they might have even talked about this in the Culture
With
Café.
the pillows?
Well, it's just the way she moves her body, the way she stands up is the same way Juliette Danielle stands up. Like, it's perfect. So I love The Disaster Artist. Sean, what is your number 9?
Number 9. The biggest, most awesome movie of the year, Star Wars: Last Jedi.
Oh, I'm so glad this made your top 10.
So it made my top 10. When I think about it, and I know it's on your list, so we can kind of talk about it now. I really enjoyed seeing, I had the same... I like this movie more than The Force Awakens. I I had the same sort of journey though with both these movies, which is the first time you're seeing it, you're nervous, you're excited, you're just trying to process everything. Who's that guy? Who's this? Where are we? What's that? And do I even like this? Is this good? Is this working? The movie starts with the knock knock joke, basically, the phone call joke. And you're like, I don't know, is this good or is this bad? And you're going in half worried that it's going to veer into, Gungan trade policy at any moment. And it wasn't until I saw it the second time that I really started seeing how much of a subversive, talk about taking the studio's money and swinging for the fences. Rian Johnson essentially made a movie about the fan experience of being a Star Wars fan, even more so than The Force Awakens, because whereas The Force Awakens was like, you have these characters that were in awe of the original cast. This is a movie that says, no, you have to make your own stories. And whenever you try to emulate or replicate them, you're going to end up in a dead end. You're going to end up at Canto Bight chasing down Mumble Man from the Usual Suspects, and the plan's going to go to shit. Like, you need to kind of forge your own way.
We talked about this a lot last week on the show, but that's what I think the genius of this film is. Is that with Force Awakens, which I love, and I think I'm a little more emotionally connected to just because Star Wars.
You saw 5 times in the theater like a maniac.
Well, Star Wars came back and it was good, and it was like, oh my God, it's back and it's good. Like, it was so, you felt so good about that. But you had to build it up again to burn it down, much like the Jedi Temple in this. Burn it down. And it is so brilliantly meta in a way that Star Wars films don't get.
No.
It's
like the perfect 21st, and it's also, this is the next to Marvel, Star Wars is the crown in Disney's jewel. This is a franchise that they need to forget franchise. This is IP that they need to cultivate and water that garden for the next 20 years, because this thing is a $500 billion enterprise, and for them to have enough insight for Kathleen Kennedy to realize that, no, you know what, we need to go ironic. We need to recognize this for what it is, and we need to pump a little life into this, and we can't be afraid to go in new directions. And if it pisses off some of the fans, guess what? Those fans are now in their 50s. We get new fans.
Exactly.
And I'm sorry that, 48-year-old man, that this wasn't the Luke Skywalker that you wanted. Boo-hoo.
It's a much more interesting Luke Skywalker. You don't want Luke Skywalker to be Obi-Wan or Yoda. You want him to be... And Luke was always kind of a bratty guy.
Yeah. There's a great essay that went up on Slate today. I want to say it's by Alex Knight. It's a long dissection of what makes The Last Jedi so good and work in such a compelling and interesting way, analyzing all the characters and the missteps and the false paths are going down, and how the movie addresses that, and really, by doing so, deconstructs like that Star Wars fandom and the myth of Star Wars, and the movie grapples directly with what it means to be a Star Wars fan and what it means to, be a character in Star Wars. So. Star
Wars is going to have to hit this point eventually.
Yeah.
And I'm glad it did with someone like Rian Johnson at the wheel.
All right.
Number 9 for me is Dunkirk.
Okay.
Another film that I would say is a driven vision of one man's vision. This was another one that it was, because this was such a good year. I was like, am I going to put this on? The experience of seeing this in IMAX in 70 millimeter is one of the great immersive film experiences I've ever had.
And you will see this stuff up on my list, so we will talk about it again. But I'm sad that I only saw it once in 70 millimeter in IMAX.
Yeah, because I know I will never see it again probably in 70 millimeter IMAX. And from shot one, I was just like, I am in this world and I am along for this ride. And it is relentless, even down to the ticking clock score. It doesn't let you off the hook for a second.
Well, the genius of this movie is that he essentially constructed an entire movie out of a third act climax.
Yes.
The whole movie is one big climax that doesn't end, essentially. And I will say, and I've always been hot and cold on Christopher Nolan. I know you love him. I think this is his best movie. I think it's his purest movie. I think it's a movie that does everything he does well at his absolute best without getting bogged down in a lot of the shit that I don't like about Christopher Nolan movies.
You know what? I don't think it's his best movie, but you hit an interesting word there with his purest film.
Yeah.
And I think that is true. I think it's beautifully straightforward in a way.
Well, because he's not trying to, he's clever with the structure and the design and the presentation of the film, but the story is the story, and there's only so much.
The stakes are the stakes,
right?
And you're fully invested. You get and there's not a lot of building of a backstory
Well, that's
here.
the thing.
Characters. It's just these men in a war who need to
And you never
be
see the
saved.
Germans. That's it.
Yeah.
And I also, where I always go off the rails with Christopher Nolan is I think he gets too clever by half with his world building, and it strains the movie too much. And here, there isn't as much world build. Like I said, it's the first time he's actually dealing with an historical story, other than Insomnia, of course.
I have been making the joke that the way to watch Darkest Hour is watch the first 2/3 of Darkest Hour, then watch all of Dunkirk, and then watch the very end of Darkest Hour. Dunkirk, I was just blown away.
Yeah.
The sound, the images,
It's pure cinema, and the best sense of the word.
What's your number 8?
My number 8 is a movie that you did not see, which is a movie that I adored, and brings us to the year of Pattinson, Good Time by the Safdie brothers.
I missed that. Fell through the cracks for me. I hear it's wonderful.
This movie is about Robert Pattinson plays a greasy little wannabe drug dealer, and his brother who has Down syndrome, and a score that goes bad, and just one horrific night as he's trying to set everything right. And it's this gritty New York crime movie, the way that you'd have in the 70s.
Yeah.
But it's filtered through a completely modern sensibility in the music, in the editing, in the cinematography, in the energy of the movie. It's a fully realized world. These guys are geniuses. I'm so excited to see what they do next. This is the biggest movie they've made so far. They're two independent filmmakers out of I want to say Long Island somewhere, but they're I think they're two Syrian and Jewish American filmmakers, and they're brothers. And one of the brothers plays Robert Pattinson's brother in the movie. And this movie has stayed with me. It's phenomenal, and it's one of those movies where you watch and you go, okay, this is the beginning of an amazing career for these guys. Like these guys are capable of big things.
And also, Pattinson has been doing such interesting work over the last few
years. He's got all that Twilight money.
Well, to be fair, Kristen Stewart too. Like the two of them, after all the Twilight bullshit, they've gone on to work in a lot of great independent films and take a lot of chances with their careers. And good for them.
We'll get to Case 2.
Number 8 for me is The Post. I think this.
I'm going to say it's my number 7. So let's talk about it.
Okay, good.
Let's get into it.
Number 7. Spielberg, he's such a mythic level of a filmmaker, and I was watching that Spielberg documentary, and it occurred to me while watching that he's not one to necessarily make timely movies.
Yeah.
And now here with The Post. This is a movie of this moment. It is about...
It's still a historical movie.
It's still historical, but it's about freedom of the press. It's about sexism. It's about all these things we're talking about now in a way that he usually doesn't do. He usually doesn't tackle an issue that's happening at that moment. And...
Well, War of the Worlds was a 9/11 film.
Yeah, but it is. But that's what I mean. Like, it is and it isn't. Like,
it's all filtered through other things.
Exactly. Yeah. This is direct. I think it's his best film since Munich. I also think it is one of Meryl Streep's best performances.
And you forget how the thing with Meryl Streep is she's a fucking magician. Every time we take it for granted, she comes out and you're like, oh, wow, you're good. And watching her, so I saw this movie again. I went back last week. I was like, I need to watch this again. I wanted to just sit down. And there's so many little details, all the side characters. First of all, it's the Mr. Show reunion we never knew we wanted.
Yep.
Which is a little distracting the first time around. A lot of the side casting can be a little distracting.
This whole film is packed the smallest of roles.
When Timothy, what's his name, shows up as one of the attorneys, you have Babyface McGee from Fargo, who's dating Kirsten Dunst.
Oh, Jesse Plemons.
Jesse Plemons. And then what's his name from Veep shows up as the other attorney.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no, not from Veep. I'm sorry, from Silicon Valley.
Silicon Valley.
Yeah, but this movie is bursting with life in all the little corners, the scenes in the newsroom, the way Tom Hanks just takes so much glee in his performance and in what they're doing. And you feel Spielberg is totally engaged with the material. And the more I kind of hear about this way Liz Hannah wrote the script and Amy Pascal snapped it up because of the story of Catherine Graham, it could have been, this was so tempting for Spielberg to make his All the President's Men. Just a procedural, or even Spotlight, which focuses more on, is a procedural about how a story gets cracked.
Yeah, that really gets into the weeds of it.
This movie is less about journalists and more, it's a strange movie because on one hand it's about journalism and the free press and the Washington Post, but really it's also a story about this one woman And it really is a character study set against all these events.
I also don't remember the last time I've seen Meryl Streep play a character this nervous and unsure of herself. Like I felt
Thatcher.
See, well, that's the thing. I feel like I saw Meryl Streep doing something I haven't seen her do in a long time.
Yes, and actually taking chances and exposing herself.
Exactly. Yeah, she feels very raw in this. And, she's gotten to the point where she sneezes and gets an Oscar nomination. Yeah. But, like, Florence Foster Jenkins, Into the Woods, like, who gives a shit? But this is a real character that you feel the pain of. You feel the nervous energy. In the scene when she decides, spoiler, they decide to print the article.
Yeah.
But in the scene when she makes that call, it's such a triumphant moment in the film, but it's done with such like reservations and nerves, and it's almost like she has to spit out the fact she's doing it really quickly, because if she doesn't, she'll never do it. And it's such a smart performance.
It's smart, and I think actually her best scene in the movie is a smaller one. It's when she goes to Robert McNamara, played by Bruce Greenwood, to tell him that they're going to go to print. And she's like, I'm not asking your permission. I'm telling you as a friend. Like, it's a movie that's just packed with riches. And once in the second, I liked it even more the second time I saw it. It's a masterpiece. And it's strange that it hasn't really even opened yet in the country.
I'm surprised that this didn't get the wide Christmas release.
Yeah.
Because it is kind of maybe they were afraid they'd get swallowed up by too many other things that were out there. Because it really is a movie that I think audiences will enjoy.
Do you think they're nervous that it's so overtly political that they're worried about this movie's going to play nationwide, so they're kind of slow rolling it?
But the thing is, no one can be like, because because it's a true story. Yeah. No one.
No, but there are slants. It is a true story, but there's definitely a lens through which this story is being presented.
Yeah, but what's the other lens? A pro-Nixon lens?
No, but there are scenes where there's some speechifying that doesn't.
Well, there were moments. There were moments that my audience literally cheered.
Of left-wing libtards.
Well, my first screening I saw of it was at the WGA.
Yeah,
and that's a very liberal-friendly crowd.
So The Post, if you haven't seen it yet, if it hasn't come to a town near you yet, it's a wonderful movie. And the only thing that Spielberg's just going to top himself with Ready Player One. He's got another one right in the chamber.
He made this film so fast,
like 6
That's
weeks.
what's unbelievable.
Yeah. Not as fast as All the Money in the World.
So that's your number 7.
That's my number 7, yes.
So I'll go into my number 7.
Yeah.
Ingrid Goes West.
Okay, I did not see this.
This is one you haven't seen, that I adore this film. It's a little cynical little film about how we basically process Instagram and Facebook and our online presence. And it's about an Instagram culture, and it's about this girl who's so deep into it, she becomes obsessive, and she Aubrey Plaza plays Ingrid, who obsesses over this character played by Elizabeth Olsen, who's an Instagram celebrity, and that's where she makes her money. She's promoting things on Instagram. And she does kind of single white female it. She tries to get close into this woman's life. And it is told with a lot of humor and just enough heart that you that you like Ingrid enough that you feel just enough for her, because the shit she is doing is crazy. And it gives you just enough heart to her that you laugh at it, but are also terrified of her.
How many cats get killed in the movie?
There are no dead cats, but there is a kidnapped dog.
Okay.
So, also O'Shea Jackson Jr., whatever, gives a hilarious performance as Ingrid's landlord, who's obsessed with Batman.
Yeah.
But these themes and his attitudes about Batman play back into how we view culture and media in an interesting way, and what Batman meant to him. It's very funny.
Is it out now already?
It's on Blu-ray now.
Okay.
Like I said, it's a bitter little pill of a film, but Aubrey Plaza gives as good a performance as anyone in this, and I kind of wish she had gotten a little bit more buzz. If you haven't seen Ingrid Goes West,
do so.
So, Sean, you're number 6.
Number 6. The Lost City of Z, another Robert Pattinson gem from this year.
A lot of Pattinson on your
This movie, it's Charlie Hunnam and Robert Pattinson, and it's about a real explorer who, before and then after World War I, made multiple voyages to the Amazon and to South America in search of this lost city that he believed existed, and eventually, spoiler, gets lost in the jungles. And this movie is James Gray has just made one excellent movie after another. Little Odessa, The Rail Yard, I want to say. And then he made The Immigrant with Marion Cotillard and Joaquin Phoenix about 3 years ago, which was excellent.
Was it just The Yard?
The Yard, The Yard. He's an amazing director, and this is the biggest thing he's ever done. This movie has...
Yeah, it has a much bigger scale than these previous ones.
And they spent weeks and weeks just getting sick and nearly dying in the jungles.
Pulled a real Herzog.
Yeah, and this movie has this like historical sweep and scope, and it's beautiful. And the last half hour is absolutely haunting. And it's the kind of movie where, going back to the idea of singularity of vision to bring you something that's just unique and different. The cinematography on this movie is beautiful. I can't wait to see it again. It's a really strange little gem of a movie. And once again, Pattinson is playing a completely different character than he does in Good Times. So I highly recommend The Lost City of Z. It's a beautiful movie.
My number 6 is I, Tonya.
Okay.
This is a film that I think the thing that has catapulted it this high for me is Margot Robbie's performance, which I think is brilliant. And I think she doesn't get ugly like Charlize Theron did, but I think this is her monster in a way. It's the movie that's like, we knew she can act because we've seen her be great in other movies, but this is where she kind of disappears more into a character. This is, the trailer calls it Goodfellas on ice, basically. And it from a filmmaking standpoint, they're stealing a lot from Scorsese. Yes. But it made me feel sympathetic for a character that in the 90s I did not feel sympathetic for. And I have over the years kind of felt a little more sympathetic for her just because learning more. And it made me think a lot about how if this incident, if the Tonya Harding, Nancy Kerrigan thing happened today, how we would process it now, how we would look at Tonya Harding. And I think we would look at her very different in an age of Twitter, in an age of like Me Too and stuff like that, because she was an abused woman. Oh yeah, there's a lot of scenes of that. And it's another one of those films. A lot of scenes of the Winter Soldier slamming her into mirrors. Yeah, and not just the Winter Soldier, but Allison Janney as well. And it's one of those films that has you laughing, like you're almost laughing at the abuse, and then it hits a point of where you're horrified by it. And I love that. I love when a film makes me and the entire audience uncomfortable for laughing along with it. And I love a film that's kind of an indictment of its audience, which I would also say a previous Margot Robbie film, The Wolf of Wall Street, is too. And I'm a sucker for that. And I, Tonya does that. I, Tonya is one of those films that turns it back on the audience. And I think it does it in a very smart and also, fun way. And it reminded me a lot of a true story from the 90s and maybe the first real scandal story Will paid attention to. Well, I guess the first one I really paid attention to was Amy Fisher, Joey Buttafuoco. But so that's my number 6. Sean, your number 5. Number 5 would be, talking about the Twilight veterans, a little movie called Personal Shopper. Starring Kirsten Stewart and her second collaboration with Oliver Assayas. He's a French director who's been around since the late 80s. I've been hot and cold on some of his stuff, but his recent run of movies, his last movie he did, The Clouds of Sils Maria with Juliette Binoche and Kirsten Stewart, and especially now A Personal Shopper. Kirsten Stewart is an amazing actress, which is such a shame because she got typecast these Twilight movies, and then people just sort of dismissed her as this stoner, sort of like this hippie stoner girl. Yeah. She is doing such amazing stuff with so little, with just her gestures and her eyes and her face in these movies. Personal Shopper is about a girl who is a personal assistant for a photographer, I believe, or a model, or a celebrity. And the movie is basically her kind of motoring and training and going back and forth from London to Paris, just doing her job, while at the same time carrying on a text conversation with who may or may not be the ghost of her dead twin brother. And this movie has just stayed with me as well. It's haunting. It's really unique. It's a fantastic performance. It's got enough mystery and enough hanging over it where you don't quite... There's all these little weird strands to the movie that elevate it beyond just being like a movie about a sad sack girl with a crappy job.
It's really fascinating, and I love seeing this collaboration these two have put together, and I just love Personal Shopper, and Criterion just came out with it on Blu-ray.
Oh, they put it on Criterion.
They put it on Criterion. So, Personal Shopper, Olivier Assayas.
Kristen Stewart, it's funny. Anything non-Twilight I've seen her in. Oh, with one nototable exception.
Yes,
being
one
the
notable
worst
exception.
film I've
was that
ever
her
seen.
fault?
No, it's not her fault, but she's not good in it either.
She's miscast as hell.
But like whenever I see her in anything
Snow White
indie,
Huntsman.
whether it be
Did you see that On the Road movie, that Kerouac movie? I didn't see that.
no, but when I like in certain women or even like the Runaways and stuff like that, I've always liked the job she's done.
Yep.
Going back to Panic Room.
Yeah, that's right.
My number 5 is Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi.
Okay.
We have talked about this ad nauseum. There was no way this wasn't going to be on my list. The Star Wars films too important.
You're a
to me.
sucker for them.
So
You didn't put Rogue One on your list last year, did you?
No.
Okay.
No.
Good.
No, I think Rogue One is problematic.
Yeah.
I think it has its moments, but it's not a great film. So we don't need to get into it anymore. So let's just get to your number 4, Sean.
My number 4 is a little movie about a girl growing up in Sacramento, 2002, called Lady Bird.
This is a little higher on my list.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you want to talk about it now, or do you want to wait till we get to till we get to it on your list?
Oh, we could talk about it now.
Okay. Lady Bird. It's interesting seeing the way this is being discussed online, because I think for many of the people who are around our age, who are now bloggers and writers for all these sites and reviewers, there's this whole generation of people that work for Slate and The Ringer and Vulture and MTV Films that all kind of came of age around the same time we did, around the early 2000s.
Yes.
And so this movie, some review I was listening to said that Lady Bird grows up, goes to NYU, and ends up writing for, and ends up becoming like a movie blogger for like Vulture in 10 years. Like all these people that adore this movie's critics, it's because they see a version of themselves in it. I actually approached this movie from a totally different lens, in that I was remembering back, this movie takes place in 2002, and there's this weird post 9/11 trauma that hangs over the characters. It's weird, and it's not really explicit in the movie, but there's this sense of, there's a little bit of like dead-endedness to her parents and the depression that
there is depression throughout almost all the characters.
Through almost
in some
all
way.
the characters, and it's not really, and it was sort of like we were still shell-shocked, because I remember like the year or two after 9/11, and then we started going into Afghanistan, and I just remember like the stress and anxiety that was hanging in the air, and I think this movie does a weird, and I don't know if this is conscious at all, but Greta Gerwig, by remembering those years and that time in high school, kind of tapped into this strange undercurrent.
She would just because she lived it, she would just naturally bring it to it.
And I love this movie for everything it does, and we can talk more about the character and story when you get to it, but there's this strange, also paralyzing trauma that hangs over the movie, which gives it this strange humming energy that the main character is kind of pushing against. And maybe I'm reading too much into it, but that was the angle or the lens that I saw it through. I think it was very specific that it takes place in 2002, because it really is like a very charged year in American history, but one that we don't really talk about,
That's true. We don't think about like necessarily the immediacy,
like that numbness after 9/11.
And a lot of these characters are numb, and there are a lot of side characters that,
like her strange Mexican brother. That's not really.
I was gonna say, like, even like the one older priest who's directing the shows, that we see that he's clearly dealing with depression, and her dad, and the relationship with her mother is just so tremendous in this. I've heard some people describe her mother as being like, because there are going to be a lot of moms nominated for supporting actress, and I think Laurie Metcalf is the one with the most nuance, because I've heard some people describe her as being monstrous.
No, not at all.
And I've heard other people describe her as being like, and she's described even in the movie this way. The Lucas Hedges character, he says, I can't remember the line, but he basically says, like, this isn't the line, but it's like, your mom is like tough and caring at the same time. That's not the line. I can't remember the line.
Well, it's interesting also.
But I think that just speaks to how, even though it's a very simple movie, just how deeply complicated all these characters are.
And the relationships. Saoirse Ronan is just like batting 1,000 at this point. Hannah, Brooklyn, Lady Bird, Atonement. She's just.
Yeah, no, she can do no wrong. I haven't seen her, even in some movies I'm not crazy about, like Atonement.
Well, she was like 11.
But she's brilliant in that. I remember walking out of that movie, the only thing I want to talk about was her.
Yeah. And that Dunkirk scene.
There's
horse
a
and the
Dunkirk
carousel.
scene. There's a pointless Dunkirk scene in that movie. But I really loved her in this film. Yeah. It's impossible not to be charmed by her.
No, you're a bigger Greta Gerwig fan and Baumbach fan than I am. What about.
Well, it's no accident, though. My favorite Baumbach stuff happens to be stuff Greta Gerwig was involved in. And Frances Ha and Mistress America, I think, are, hilarious films, really well-written scripts. And I don't know. I feel with Lady Bird, though, she's made a film better than anything Baumbach's done.
And her Lady Bird so far has grossed more. Someone said that any of his movies combined. Which, I don't. They're not going to be together for much longer.
And I also think Lady Bird could win Best Picture.
Yeah. Do you think it's like this year's Moonlight?
I think so, because I think it's the kind of film, and we will get to this once the nominations are out. But I think it's the kind of film that in a preferential ballot does really well because everybody likes it. It's going to be everyone's number 2 or 3.
Right.
It might not be their number 1, but it'll be everyone's 2 or 3. So I think it could win Best Picture.
I think we may have another director-picture split again this year.
I think as long as we have the preferential ballot, we're always going to. Because director's always going to go to something more technical like Dunkirk or The Shape of Water. And
or Quiet Passion.
And then best Picture could slip in. So I guess my number 4 now.
Do it.
Get Out.
Okay.
I saw this with you, right?
Yeah.
And we saw it almost a year ago.
Yeah.
And
I think it was one of the first movies we saw of the year. I think it was like January 4th or something.
We saw it the day of the Oscars.
Oh, we did. That's right.
And then we watched the Oscars afterwards. And this film is so sharp.
I think when I walked out, I said that's going to win Best Picture next year.
It's going to be in the race. It is so sharp in what it's saying about race and about white people.
Yes.
But it's done with so much humor that it lets everybody in, and it undercuts some of the harder edges with its humor. The Rod character, the TSA stuff.
After we talk about this, I got to tell you, my coworker, who is 74 years old, watched it, and I'll tell you what she said about it.
It is perfectly cast.
Yes.
Has anyone ever been cast better as a white woman than Allison Williams? And that whole family, Bradley Whitford, Catherine Kennedy, he's taking also these very liberal actors and putting them in this ultra liberal family, but even these liberals are the way they treat black people.
And this is a little bit higher on my list. So this movie is such a raw nerve that somehow, it was written about and during the Obama era, but once again couldn't help but be reinterpreted when it came out.
Especially when we see it a month after the inauguration.
Yes. Dylan Brody tweeted something very interesting about this movie. He said the black experience as illustrated in this film must be to African Americans what the immigrant and persecution experience is like for Jewish people. That he's putting into film something that's like a cultural anxiety of a portion of society and the portion of the population that Jews have been very good at kind of artistically expressing their own sense of persecution, dislocation, immigration, all of that. We've kind of had our run. We had our people, and this movie is phenomenal. But
horror has always been a genre that's good at capturing things like that.
Yeah.
And I don't think gets enough credit for being able to capture feelings like that and present them in an entertaining way with still having a message. And I'm glad to see that it's getting so much awards consideration.
And they made a shit ton of money.
Yeah.
Jordan Peele tweeted Get Out as a documentary.
Yeah.
Yeah, so...
And just great performances. I think even Daniel Kaluuya might get an Oscar nomination for anchoring that film. You really go on a journey with that character. You feel for him. I loved it. I love this film. Your number 3, Sean.
That would be Dunkirk.
Okay.
Very high up on the list, and it was sort of a late chaser. It went up, and I think what put it so high up there is because it's just a cinematic masterpiece in every sense of the word. Especially with the way TV now has sort of transformed itself. What makes a movie more, as we're bombarded by mass entertainment and quality TV and peak TV and now post peak TV and the Silver Age and whatever they're calling it. There's so much good stuff on TV, but what I'm looking for in movies and the things that, for me, are markers of quality and uniqueness and things that I think will have longevity are those movies that really are doing something different. In a way, it's what I'm not going to get from television. Either this, like Get Out, this really focused artistic vision of something, or something so grand and so much of spectacle and craftsmanship that once again, you're not going to get it at home. So Dunkirk for me.
And I think that's why Dunkirk was on my list too. Yeah. Like I said, the IMAX 70mm experience. Yeah. I can't imagine watching Dunkirk
on a phone while taking a shit.
Yeah.
Those dogfight sequences wouldn't work quite the same way.
My number 3 is Logan.
Okay.
Which is already probably my second favorite behind a certain Christopher Nolan film. Yeah. Superhero film of all time. Because it's based in such a grounded grittiness that the other X-Men films aren't. It's given me everything I've ever wanted from the Wolverine character and didn't even come close to ever getting until now. It's really about family. It's really a Western.
And it did the thing these superhero movies don't do, which is have an ending.
Yeah.
None of these Marvel movies have an ending. It's just like, tune in for the next exciting chapter.
And it has a heartbreaking ending.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been out a while, but I mean, the ending.
There's no Logan 2, kids.
Yeah. Even also what it does with the Professor X character is heartbreaking, that you see this man kind of losing his mind, and he's got the most powerful mind in the world, but he's losing it. And they played with all these ideas in an interesting way. It is very Western-y, he is but
also has a feel of those Maximum Overdrive, some of those Clint Eastwood movies. It also has a Dirty Harry feel to it as well. Some of those later,
I could see that. I could see that. I like, he's going up against, it's a redemption story for Logan. He's got one last kind of hurrah in him, and can he go out like the gunslinger and save the girl and save the day? And I
go
think
out like Shane, yeah.
I've lived with this Hugh Jackman playing this character since 2000. Yeah. So now 17 years later, it's impossible not to take all that history along with it.
Which is not part of the problem of the movie, but that the movie doesn't work without him, coming back.
Well, I did show this to somebody. Yeah. I showed it to 2 people recently who have not seen the other X-Men movies. And one of them loved it and one of them did not.
Early in the year, we were kind of saying, could Patrick Stewart get an Oscar nomination? I feel like some air's gone out of that balloon.
They were quietly pushing him too. There've been a lot of screenings, recently. I've even gotten emails for him, but it's not happening, which is a shame.
Sorry, Jean-Luc.
What's your number 2?
My number 2, going back to filmmakers going out and finding interesting stories and making interesting projects, that would be The Florida Project by Sean Baker and our friend Chris Burgock. This movie is something really special. And these guys have a gift for just sniffing out an interesting locale and immersing themselves in the environment and talking to people and just hearing their stories. And it's so human, their approach to the movie in this world, and it doesn't feel exploitative and it doesn't feel artificial.
Between this and Tangerine, they are experts at really taking an honest look at people who are kind of on the fringe of society.
Their movie before Tangerine, which I didn't see.
Star.
About a porn star.
Yeah, they take these really honest, warts and all, looks at people on the fringes of society and make you really feel for them.
And then populate it with non-actors and non-professionals or amateurs and faces you haven't seen before.
Yeah, the big step with this is having Willem Dafoe, who's giving a great performance in this, as kind of he's kind of the calm center of this world.
He is, and the movie is just beautifully shot. The performance by the kids, this is a really special movie. And at the same time, it's a movie that's looking at, the minimally employed in our country, looking at people that are just existing below the poverty line. And, the poor whites in this country as well. Let us all weep for the poor whites. But, and the genius of this movie is where they shot it and where it takes place, right down the road from Orlando, from Disney World. And also the way this movie ends is
the ending of this has stayed with me more than maybe any other scene in any other movie this year in a lot of ways. I know a lot of people who don't like the ending. I think I've argued with a lot of people on Twitter who feel the ending is kind of a betrayal of what they came before. But I disagree. I think it's kind of a beautiful last fleeting moment of freedom before some of these characters' lives are going to change, probably for the better in the long run, in a lot of ways.
It's true.
But, in the way it's shot, I mean...
Well, it's also shot they shot it on 35mm film. Like, it looks beautiful.
Yeah, this film is gorgeous.
And, Willem Dafoe just lived in the motel with all of them, like, no vanity about it. It was just... And the actress that he worked with who played the mother... I was listening to an interview with Sean Baker and talked about how, like, he was very nurturing with her and helped her along and knew that she was an up-and-coming actor.
Well, she was an Instagram
right,
person.
Exactly.
They were looking for an actress with her look.
But also that had, like, no self-consciousness.
And then they're like, we should just get her.
Yeah.
So, it's a beautiful movie. Yeah. It's a really beautiful movie. So my number 2 is Lady Bird.
There we go.
Which we have discussed. So...
There you go.
I feel like there's no need to get back into it. Although I have a feeling we've discussed your number
Wild card. Tie for first place.
Oh, fuck you.
Wild card.
I was sitting here and I'm like, well, he already said Get Out.
Wild card.
But I'm like, there's another movie that I'm convinced was going to be on his list.
I had to. And it's because Well, what's your number 1 before? Oh, okay, I see what it is. I remember what it is.
Yeah. But now it's like I'm annoyed I didn't do a wild card.
Wild card.
For like my number 10.
Yeah.
Because
you wanted to get Mother in there, I know.
Well,
let's do this. Let's discuss our number 1s. And then let's go through your honorable mentions quickly in our your 11 through 20.
Well, we've discussed one of your number
Right, so Get Out. So my other number 1 is the masterpiece of The Phantom Thread.
I was shocked. Yeah, I was.
You were waiting for it.
I was waiting for it, and I'm like,
I know. As soon as I tipped on Get Out, I knew it was going to happen. Here's why I had to put the two of them together. These two movies exist for me on two sides of a coin. The Phantom Thread is this strange, timeless movie that feels like it was just ripped out of the sky and brought to us from the heavens. It is weird. It is beautiful. It's steeped in classic Hollywood, but it's very modern in the way it approaches the relationship. And this movie is literally like this perfect little strange masterpiece that is not trying to address society or culture or the moment we're in, and yet at the same time...
Well, it's a real character study.
It's a character study, but by not trying to touch any of those things, by not trying to intellectualize any of it, you can make readings into this movie, and this movie just sends waves and continues to exist like far beyond its boundaries. Where Get Out, as I said, is like this raw nerve that just was pulled right out of this moment and manages to be very specific about the times we're living in now and be this also a singular vision, but is working in if a Phantom Thread is working from the outside in, Get Out works from the inside out. You know,
Phantom Thread, yeah, everything about it, from the way it's shot into the score, the John Greenwood score, which is like mixes up with classical music. Everything's very classical about it. Everything feels very timeless about it.
And the performance is what Daniel Day-Lewis is doing, and Vicky Creep. It's so
Vicky Creep's. Where did she come from? Luxembourg.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, she is amazing. She goes toe to toe with him.
Yeah.
And
and they had no rehearsals. Daniel Day-Lewis doesn't like to rehearse.
It's unbelievable because not only does her character, but as an actress, she's just as good in every scene with him. And he's one of the ultimate. And if this is his last film, I think it is a perfect note for him to go out on. It's a great last film.
When I walked out of the movie, I texted you guys. I'm like, kill me and send me to the world of the Phantom Thread.
Yeah.
This was the most delicious movie that I saw.
It's also very funny.
Yes.
Which I don't think people realize going in, that there's a lot of humor in it. I loved...
Let's talk about your number one, which is one of my honorable mentions.
The Killing of a Sacred Deer is my number one. It is such a... Yorgos Lanthimos makes the strangest films, and I love them all. And he makes films that, for me, just really deeply stay with me. Yeah. Why is Killing a Sacred Deer my number one film? Because I did not have a good night's sleep after seeing it. Because I was haunted by it. Because I replayed scenes of this in my head and replayed... just the way he presents the characters and the way the characters speak in the stilted way feels otherworldly and thus is also upsetting because we are obviously in real life, but we're in this upsetting version of it where everybody is just coldly talking about watch bands and these simple things, or watching Groundhog Day in just such an unamused, basic, just straightforward way.
And the actor who plays the kid is
also in Dunkirk.
That's right. He is in
Dunkirk.
Not Barry Jenkins.
Keenan or
Kehoe? Something like that, yeah. This guy's someone to watch. He's basically, if John Cusack had a car accident as a child, that's who this kid would be.
He is a horrifying villain in this film. But he's also a villain that, you get why he's upset. But then what he is doing is so horrific, and what he is asking Colin Farrell to do is so horrific. It's does the punishment fit the crime? So it's also a very strange take on vengeance. And
sacrifice and compromise.
And the way the children are bargaining for their lives with their father is hilarious
and super upsetting.
Horrifying. This film has stayed with me in a way few films have.
So this movie was basically my number 11, and if I were to go back in 5 years and revisit this, I wouldn't be shocked if something shifted around and maybe this creeps back in. Because I agonized a lot about this movie. I really liked it. I liked it more than Lobster.
I like it more than Lobster.
I saw a very funny tweet. It says, Nicole Kidman's 2017 to-do list: win a Golden Globe, win an Emmy, destroy Colin Farrell's life twice.
Yeah.
On screen twice. Because this is The Beguiled. Yeah. Colin Farrell and Nicole Kidman do not have a good... Poor Colin Farrell. Also, this movie is the most... I think I told you this after I saw it. I think Lanthimos, how do you pronounce the name? Lanthimos? Lanthimos is probably the closest thing we have to a student of Stanley Kubrick. This movie felt, and part of it was because Nicole Kidman was in it, but this movie felt so much in so many ways like Eyes Wide Shut to me.
Well, also all these antiseptic looking sets and
these long Steadicam shots from weird angles that travel with the characters, and the use of the music and the lights and the way that Colin Farrell also plays a wealthy doctor going through these. Yeah.
I think your number one has lots of hints of Kubrick in it too. Yes. The Phantom Thread.
There was lots of hints of Kubrick, Hitchcock.
There's a big Rebecca thing.
Yes,
but there was some shots that reminded me straight out of Barry Lyndon.
Yes,
Phantom
exactly.
Thread.
Phantom Thread also.
I think there's even a zoom at one point that was a very Kubrickian zoom.
But Killing of a Sacred Deer, fantastic as well.
I would say, you said Killing of a Sacred Deer might be your 11, and Phantom Thread and Florida Project might tie for my 11. Those were the two that were there was a lot that was tough to leave off, but those were the two toughest to leave off. So let me just run down.
Yeah, let me give you your other ones. I'll give you my quick honorable mentions.
I did my 11 to 20, it would be Florida Project, Phantom Thread. It killed me not to put those on it, but it's been that good a year. The Shape of Water.
Yes. One of my honorable. So yeah, those are one of my honorable mentions.
The Big Sick.
Honorable mention,
which I think is just a great, perfect romantic comedy.
Yes.
My number 15 was Colossal,
which I never saw.
Which is another just quirky, indie, crazy film but also says a lot about toxic masculinity and alcoholism, and it's fascinating. 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. Wonder Woman.
Yeah, one of my honorable mentions.
Coco.
Honorable mention.
Okja.
I didn't put an honorable mention, but I liked it. I think I would have liked it more once again had I seen it in the theaters.
And my last one, Mudbound.
Yeah, well, as we mentioned earlier today.
Yeah, I think both Okja and Mudbound would have been higher on my list if I'd seen them in theaters, which is upsetting because...
it's a problem because you don't want to spend the money, too. You already spent enough on movies.
And you have Netflix right there.
I know.
So it's hard not to, although I'm thinking that when Scorsese's film comes out, I might go see it in the theaters just because it's Scorsese.
And, Marty's got to eat. The other one's Call Me By Your Name, which was a movie that I loved it when I saw it. Another movie where it just killed me and put me in that world. I still think it's a beautiful movie, but you thought they were insufferable. The movie, the more I thought about it, was a little airless. And the more I thought about it, it didn't feel like it's a beautiful movie. It didn't feel like there were more mysteries in there for me to penetrate.
There's not a lot to unpack.
Maybe some of the performances I would enjoy watching again, but there's not a lot to unpack. It's just sort of a lush. I'd want to kind of experience the visuals of that movie again.
Call Me By Your Name is a movie that intellectually I like so much that's going on, but emotionally I found the characters too pretentious and bratty for it to hit me hard. And I also...
Michael Stuhlbarg, by the way, also having a year.
Michael Stuhlbarg is great and has my favorite scene in Call Me By Your Name.
Also, he's in The Post.
And The Shape of Water.
And The Shape of Water.
What I love... I didn't love the film, but the thing about Call Me By Your Name, and I understand also why it's so important, is particularly to gay audiences, because what you have in Call Me By Your Name, and this is something intellectually I like and kind of makes me wish I liked the movie more, the inherent issue in their relationship isn't necessarily their homosexuality.
Right. There's no persecution. There's no family judgment.
Exactly. It's anything. It's the kid starting to learn about his sexuality and in the same way that even a straight person might not know how to handle relationships and stuff like that. And that's why it's good. Whereas the gay-themed films that I enjoy more, I realize the characters are far more persecuted, be it last year's winner, Moonlight, or Brokeback Mountain.
Blue is the
warmest color. I would argue those characters aren't persecuted. Yeah. I would argue that Blue is the warmest color is much closer to Call Me By Your Name. But I do understand...
Replace peaches with pasta.
But I do understand why some people have a problem with it, because it is told through the male gaze. Yeah,
it is.
But I love those girls in that movie, and I think I love that film. So I don't know, Call Me By Your Name, I wish it worked for me more than it did.
Two more honorable mentions. I got Raw, which is a French film from earlier in the year.
I didn't see that.
I think you'll like it.
I love it.
Basically about a girl that's going to a very high-pressure boarding school and decides that she loves the taste of human flesh. It's a weird movie, and the audience I saw it with did not know what to make of it. And the last honorable mention of the year, and I cannot end the year without giving a little love to John Wick Chapter 2.
Look at that. That was actually a lot of fun.
Yes.
And what I liked about John Wick Chapter 2 is that it kept the same gritty feel of John Wick, and yet upped all the set pieces and upped the world, but it never betrayed the world it had created with John Wick.
It's just tons of fun. I dare you to go to a movie that's more fun than John Wick 2 for just if you just want bullet to the head violence. What else did you have?
What did you think of Three Billboards Outside Ebbing,
I enjoyed it when I watched it, but once again, it's a movie that didn't stay with me, and I did, going back, you didn't finish the Slate discussion of it, or maybe you did on the drive over here. It's a bunch of really good scenes, but I don't think the movie completely works, and I think that's the performances are great, but it's emotionally whipsawing you around too much, and ultimately it didn't fully work for me, and I just found it a little...
It's a movie I really like.
It's a little more upsetting, I walked out feeling more upset than I was entertained or questioning.
It's a movie I really like, but I can't argue with any of the criticisms of it, particularly criticisms that they feel like maybe it. If someone told me,
I don't want to fire that movie up, and I'm not like going to roll up.
But the performances are all so good, and I was so up for the ride of it that I still put it in my top 20. I understand, someone told me it feels like a caricature of America in a way, and it is written by an Irishman. But that never bothered me. Maybe because I have that same character of certain areas of our country. But I think there's also a lot of pathos in the performance, particularly Woody Harrelson, who's not getting as much play as some of the other characters.
You mean with his smoking hot Australian model wife with an unexplained accent who's just like a perfect 10? That was a little jarring. The actress played as well. That's not
Abby Cornish.
Yeah, whatever. She was very distracting. Girls like that don't exist outside in Ebbing, Missouri.
Well, you're gonna be not that far from him, or maybe you should go to Ebbing.
I don't know, actually, now, but I wonder if it becomes a huge tourist site where they have, like, the billboards. If I were them, if it's an actual town, I don't even know, they should put those billboards up full time.
Oh, yeah, about the people being raped and burned alive.
People will come. If you build it, will.
So,
good year for movies.
Great year for movies. But there has to be an enemy of the podcast.
Oh, right, we got to do that.
There has to be an enemy. But with these great movies, how could there be? There were so many good movies. But then I started looking at a bunch of critics' top 10 lists. I went to the page that there's like 100 different critics. Because I like looking at lists. And as I'm going through these lists, oh, great movies, great movies. But then I noticed there were a couple of jerks who decided to not put a Florida Project or a Get Out on their list. Because instead, they decided to put something that was not a movie on their top 10 list. I love David Lynch. And I love Twin Peaks. And I loved Twin Peaks: The Return. When I did my top 10 shows of the year, it was number 3.
Because it was a show.
Because it was a television show. And I know Lynch said, I want you to look at it like it's a movie, an 18-hour movie. But that doesn't mean it's actually an 18-hour movie. It's a fucking TV show. You know how I know? Because each week I'd sit down and turn it on. Oh, Twin Peaks is on. Time to turn on the television and watch it. It is not a movie because no one is sitting in a theater for 18 hours watching it. They are sitting at home watching it on TV. And I'm also willing to say, if it was played as an 18-hour movie, I don't know if it should be on these lists because it would be exhausting. It would drain all the life out of you. As a TV show, it's perfect because I have time to digest the crazy shit I just saw. You know, you don't put some crazy fucking Andy Warhol thing that you had to weigh an Empire on where you're watching the Empire State Building for 24 hours and be like, movie of the year. So no, it's not. And you want to know what? Furthermore, I saw people who put individual episodes from it on there. Someone's like, well, that episode, what was it? Episode
8 or something.
Episode 8, that episode 8. Yeah, you know what? That might be one of the greatest hours of television I saw in my life. So you can't be putting this fucking Twin Peaks on the list of movies and taking away slots from good movies. And that's why you, Twin Peaks: The Return, this week's enemy of the podcast, go fuck yourself. Stop saying you're a movie. You're not a movie. And there was this big debate on Twitter. Did you see in film Twitter? There was a big debate.
This was Sight and Sound that were like that pulled this shit first, weren't they?
Is this a movie?
No, it's not a debate.
It's not a debate. It's a television show. End of story.
Last year I thought that the O.J. Made in America documentary was possibly the best movie of the year.
It was in my top 10.
Yeah, and that was a movie that you could have actually sat and watched. Yes, it was 7 hours, but you could have gone and watched it in a theater for a very long afternoon, and it was constructed as one large story. Like, if you just watch that from beginning to end, it's telling one big story.
Yeah.
And it was edited without, they had to jam in the commercial breaks when they put on ESPN because it was edited without, they didn't edit it with commercial breaks in mind.
Twin Peaks, I'm sorry, I know he says it's constructed as a movie, and I guess the problem is it's Lynch, so if he made it as a movie, it might have been just as fucking crazy. But would there have been all those musical numbers that were ending episodes, and if this was seen as a movie, would you have? I don't think
he would have presented it differently.
He would have presented it differently. Where that OJ thing would have been presented exactly the same.
Exactly. Do you think Lynch would ever do like a 4.5 hour? Is there a way to do like a 4.5 hour cut of that season into like a movie?
No.
Okay.
No, there is.
Just checking.
But Twin Peaks: The Return ends with the possibility of more Twin Peaks.
Oh, wonderful.
And there's even been like the dossier written afterwards that you could buy now that Mark Frost, which is kind of like Mark Frost's take on.
Yeah, Mark Frost
This is what everything meant.
He needs his money.
I do wonder if, rather than a season 4, I wonder, much like with Fire Walk with Me, if the better result would be Lynch to give us like a 2-hour movie picking up where this left off.
Right.
I don't know.
Okay, we'll wait for that. I guess we'll have to wait till our movie preview episode. I don't know, like, other than that, there's a new Scorsese movie and Ready Player One, obviously. And is Infinity...
Which comes out in March, so it's not going to be in our summer movie preview.
Is Infinity War 2 movies or 1?
It is...
Because the advertisement just says Infinity War.
Yeah, they're calling the other one something else.
Okay, gotcha. Right.
You know, we got some good stuff coming out. We got Black Panther.
Yeah, but
as far as stuff before the summer hits, like that's
anyone else
good.
big got anything coming out? I don't know.
You know, I haven't looked.
We gotta look. I don't know. 2017, you were a great year for movies.
This year's not going to be nearly as good.
Who knows? There could be some stuff that sneaks in that's not even on our radar yet.
Yeah. Well, there was stuff this year that snuck in. Lady Bird was not on my radar.
Is there a Quentin Tarantino movie? No, that's not coming out this year.
That comes out the following year.
Okay. Well, 2019 will be a good year for movies.
Yeah, that's coming out timed with when the Manson murders happened.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
He's gonna totally project it on in the on Cielo
But we do
Drive.
get Solo.
All right, fine.
Which comes out in May.
I bet you they push it. They do this every time. It always is a spring release, and they go, no.
We're pretty close to it.
They're going to push it. You know what? Give Ron Howard a little more time.
So does that mean in April we have to have frantic text messages getting our tickets for Solo?
Probably. Although we know which theater we're going to now. Got that covered.
Got that free pass.
Yeah, but that expires by...
March.
And also you got to show up at the box office to use it. You can't use it online.
I got to use that before March.
And you'll go re-see something. Go see the post again.
I go re-see Last Jedi.
All right, fine. Enjoy. And on that note, thank you, everyone, for our indulgent Best of 2017 episode.
Yes. Next week, we're taking a little time off.
I'm going on vacation.
Sean's going on vacation after the holiday vacation.
Listen.
He goes on vacation.
December is my busy time. January, things slow up. Although if the last 2 days have been any indication, listen, all you fucks. Your New Year's resolutions seem to make my life miserable. So, having an ass full with people at work. And on that note, for the Will Sean Podcast, I'm Sean David.
I'm Will Link.
And we're finished.
We're finished.